This is the story of a man who used to say, "Dogs live more natural and better lives than people. People are phonies, liars, cheats, fools, flatterers, chasing after money and status." His name was Diogenes the Cynic. He was the brave philosopher who used to say it out loud. To him, most people were just well-dressed idiots, fooling themselves and trying to fool others. While society prides itself on being civilized, Diogenes believed that under the surface, we're no better than two-legged animals driven by desire, greed, and self-importance. He mocked, insulted, and exposed every layer of hypocrisy he saw in his fellow citizens. In one of his most iconic acts, Diogenes of Cynope walked through the bustling streets of Athens under the full light of day, holding a lit lantern. Curious onlookers laughed and asked what he was doing. His answer was as sharp as it was simple: "I'm looking for an honest man." To many, it seemed like theater. But Diogenes wasn't joking. He meant it. He genuinely believed that honesty, the kind rooted in virtue, self-awareness, and alignment with nature, was so rare that he might as well be hunting ghosts. When asked later why he carried the lantern in daylight, he explained that he saw no real humans, only two-legged animals. To Diogenes, the vast majority of people were not governed by reason or virtue. They were instinct-driven creatures masquerading as civilized beings, chasing pleasure, wealth, and status like beasts in human skin. This wasn't a passing insult. It was the core of his philosophy. Diogenes lived by a ruthless standard. A human being is only truly human if they live according to nature and reason, not social customs, not empty politeness, and certainly not personal gain. As one historian puts it, his symbolic lamp was a way of declaring that ordinary Athenians were the true madmen, and he alone was sane. Diogenes saw through the veneer of respectability and into the hollow core of human behavior. To him, the city's obsession with money, honor, and comfort was the very definition of insanity. He found more integrity in dogs than in men. In a later age, Mark Twain would echo this bitter truth: "The more I learn about people, the more I like my dog." But for Diogenes, this wasn't a clever line. It was a personal creed. He didn't just preach it, he lived it. Diogenes rejected comforts, titles, and luxuries. He slept in a barrel, begged for food, and dressed in rags, not to shock or rebel, but to stay honest. He stripped life down to its essentials, believing that only by removing pretense could one see the truth. This is why his search for honesty quickly became an indictment of all humanity. When he once begged a statue for money, someone asked why. His answer? To get used to being refused. He'd rather talk to stone than rely on the so-called kindness of people. Even statues, in his view, disappointed less. One day, when greeted kindly by a well-dressed Athenian, Diogenes sneered. To him, there was no value in polite greetings or good manners if they weren't backed by genuine character. These people, he believed, care more about how they appear than who they are. He called them actors in a play they didn't write, reciting lines handed to them by society with no idea what they actually meant. Diogenes believed that people deceived not only others, but worse, themselves. They wore social masks for so long, they forgot they had faces underneath. One scholar summarized his view. Virtue doesn't mean the same to the Cynics as it does to Socrates or Plato. For Diogenes, a virtuous man acts purely by nature and reason, without any artificial coverings. So he kept walking with that lantern, not searching for a spectacle, but trying to prove a point, that to find even one honest man in a crowd of thousands was nearly impossible. Diogenes called them fools, and he didn't just question human intelligence, he questioned whether most people even deserved to be called human. In his eyes, they were simply animals playing dress-up, wearing togas and titles, speaking in polite tones, but utterly detached from truth or nature. One of his sharpest attacks came at the expense of Plato. When Plato famously defined a human being as an animal, bipedal and featherless, Diogenes plucked a chicken, marched into Plato's academy, and declared, "Here is Plato's man." The students were shocked, but the point landed with perfect sarcasm. If your definition of a man is so hollow that it includes a chicken, then your philosophy isn't wisdom, it's wordplay. But Diogenes' critique ran deeper than semantics. He believed civilization had made people more pathetic, not more evolved. Animals lived simply, according to instinct and necessity. Humans, on the other hand, tangled themselves in artificial needs: power, fame, reputation. He said, "The market corrupts men. They think they are living, but they are already dead." To expose this madness, Diogenes often mocked people in the most absurd ways. One day, when Athens was in a panic preparing for war, citizens rushing about, hammering, shouting, running errands, Diogenes calmly took an empty barrel and began rolling it up and down the street. When asked what he was doing, he answered, "I just wanted to look busy like the rest of you." The image was absurd, but the message was deadly serious. Most people are just performing tasks without meaning, rushing for the sake of rushing, chasing prestige instead of purpose. He stripped life to its barest form, rejecting every societal layer that claimed to elevate man. He wore ragged clothes, or sometimes none at all, declaring, "No animal should wear clothes." To him, garments were not a sign of dignity, but vanity. One day he saw a man obsessively adjusting his tunic in a mirror. Diogenes shot back, "If it's to attract men, you're a fool. If to deceive women, you're a knave." No pretense escaped his ridicule. Whether a philosopher, a politician, or a fashion-addicted Athenian, everyone was fair game if their actions were absurd. Diogenes chose dogs as his symbol, not because they were aggressive, but because they were honest. He even embraced the name the dog. When asked why he acted like a dog, he explained, "I fawn upon those who give me anything and bark at those who give me nothing." In one encounter, he saw a philosopher boasting of his achievements. Diogenes reportedly spat in his direction and said, "I spit on your pride." To Diogenes, dressing up ignorance with eloquence didn't make it wise, it made it dangerous. He didn't just criticize fashion or flattery. He rejected every institution that rewarded performance over principle. Schools, temples, councils. He believed they were populated not by seekers of truth, but by imposters rehearsing roles. At Plato's academy, he once wore prison rags, removed them, and declared, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I return thither. The gods yet have on no clothes." He didn't believe wisdom came from books, robes, or debates. It came from experience, from living with nothing and needing nothing. "You speak of virtue while living in luxury. What do you know of truth?" He would sneer at the well-fed scholars lounging in velvet seats. He viewed their lofty speeches as intellectual makeup over an empty soul. His contempt extended from philosophers to kings. One infamous encounter involved Aristippus, a philosopher who gladly enjoyed court life, dining comfortably at the table of King Dionysius. Diogenes saw him washing vegetables one day and mocked, "If you had learned to make these your diet, you would not have paid court to kings." Aristippus tried to deflect, suggesting it was better to live in comfort than chew roots. Diogenes shot back, "If you would live on lentils, you wouldn't have to flatter the tyrant." This exchange crystallized his worldview. People sell their dignity for comfort. True freedom doesn't come from wealth. It comes from needing nothing. In Diogenes' mind, dependence on rulers, philosophical, political, or social, was a form of slavery. He proved this belief time and again, even before Alexander the Great, the most powerful man of his time. When Alexander visited him, intrigued by the audacity of a man who seemed to care for nothing, Diogenes didn't bow or rise. He remained lying in the sun. Alexander greeted him and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Diogenes replied, "Yes, stand out of my sun." Alexander, to his credit, was impressed. He later said, "If I were not Alexander, I should wish to be Diogenes." This wasn't just theater. Diogenes believed that philosophy should liberate, not flatter. Philosophers, he argued, should exist to reveal truth and strip away illusion, not to win applause from kings or write clever definitions. They serve a purpose, not to glorify themselves, but to heal a broken world with unflinching honesty. When asked what benefit he gained from philosophy, Diogenes answered, "The ability to feel at ease in any society." He was at home in a marketplace, a slum, or a royal court, not because he was adaptable, but because he was detached. To Diogenes, truth was the only place a man could ever feel truly comfortable. That's why he mocked laws, titles, and institutions as masks. He once claimed, "If all the laws were repealed, we should go on living as we do now." This wasn't nihilism. It was a challenge to all forms of false authority. He believed that morality and wisdom should be internal, not imposed by governments or academies. "The man who lives by nature," he said, "needs no laws to behave justly, and the man who lives by flattery, no law will save from corruption." His life became a mirror turned on society, and what it reflected wasn't noble. It was absurd. People chasing approval, polishing their speeches, bowing to authority, pretending at wisdom. In Diogenes' eyes, every one of them was just a well-dressed fool, from the throne to the classroom. And if the so-called best among humanity were driven by ego and delusion, what hope was there for the rest? Anyways, this was what I had to offer today. Keep in mind, a lot of Diogenes' stories have been proven to be made up, and there might be one or two here as well, but I wouldn't say he was any different from how he's been presented. So take what aligns with you, leave what doesn't, and add what's your own. That was Bruce's advice, and mine too.